Okay, so I'm quite excited about this topic. Doesn't seem very interesting, but my hope is that it will unlock a few doors and that a few lights will go on. And it's about the state of limbo, the nature of limbo. And limbo is, it's a strange word. It's got a bit of a religious connotation, but the essence or the meaning of the word really means to be in a state of transition. I think originally it was used as a word to describe the boundary to hell. So it was like the, almost like the gateway to hell, being a state of limbo, almost where you're stuck and possibly even trapped. And whilst you're being processed to decide whether you're going to go to heaven or whether you're going to go to hell. And nonetheless, limbo these days is just a word in our regular vocabulary to describe something that's in a state of transition. And the reason that I want to talk about limbo is because it's a widely misunderstood concept, because and it can really be, a lot of people frown upon limbo because it's a very common way for someone who is averse to taking responsibility, someone who refuses to claim any authority and responsibility for the decisions that they make, for whatever reason, because of past trauma, because they've been scapegoated in a vicious way in the past. For whatever reason, they feel extremely resistant to taking responsibility. And they have it's a real fear that they have about taking responsibility. Now, it's a very unfortunate state of affairs for someone who's afraid to claim their own authority, let alone take responsibility for things. And what you'll find is these people are, always trying to get someone else to make the decisions. And they'll claim that they're happy for other people to make the decisions and have the authority, and they seem agreeable, but the reality is that they do have desires. They have authentic needs and feelings and wants, and the only way they're ever going to have those needs met is by manipulating the environment around them to get people to make the decision that they want to be made. And so, of course, all of us are doing this all the time, influencing the environment around us, to try and sculpt it, to bend it to our will. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, for someone that is wielding no power, like in a system, for example, let's look at an ecosystem as an example. Within an ecosystem, there's nothing within it that can call itself life, that doesn't hold authority. All of nature is a process of delegated, distributed, and then consolidated authority. Every form of life, it holds authority and therefore wields power in the ecosystem. And you could describe its power as its latent potential. So what is the uniqueness of that form of life, and what does it express into that ecosystem, and how does that unique expression enable thriving to take place within that ecosystem? How is it meeting the unmet need of some other form of life? This is the power. This is the authority of a unique form of life. It has unique needs that have to be met by the ecosystem containing it and the ecosystem that it's a part of. There will be other components to that ecosystem that are benefiting and thriving because of what that form of life is imbuing into the system. It's done inadvertently, but an ecosystem exists because of the interdependency and diversity created by the uniqueness of everything, every form of life contained within it. And that's how you measure how effective a system is. Well, how effective an ecosystem is its capability plus its capacity to thrive. And the barometer is the diversity of life that's within it. And the more diverse that life is, the more interdependent chains there will be within that ecosystem. And so there's nothing in that ecosystem that has no power, that has no authority. And so if you bring that into a human system, that, most of you will know, I design human systems and processes that mimic nature. And if you're bringing this into a human system, or even if it's a system to build an organization, or to build a framework for a software application that is perpetual and self-regulating and self-perpetuating, there's no component within that system that doesn't have its own authority, that doesn't hold power in that system, that doesn't have a purpose. And so it's not possible for a human being to be part of a wealth generating system if they refuse to take responsibility and claim their authority. Unless they are imbuing something into the system, they're leeching off it. And a wealth generating system can't sustain itself if there's a leak. The nature of a perpetual system is that it generates wealth, meaning that there's a surplus of, let's say, an ecosystem, a wealth generating ecosystem. It is generating a surplus of biomass over and above the needs of the ecosystem itself. So there's a surplus of what everything within that ecosystem needs, and it happens purely because of the existence of everything within it following its own nature. It's not trying to create wealth. It's just being the best version of itself that it can. But what happens is, together, collectively, they're creating a surplus of biomass. And so if you bring that into a human system, biomass our equivalent would be money. It's the liquidity in the system that sustains every component part. So if it's a human system, the money or the mechanism for liquidity meaning the biomass, is the fuel. Every component within that system has to be able to utilize that liquidity to meet its own needs, and that's what we call biomass in an ecosystem. It's the collective combined sustenance of that ecosystem in all of its varying forms. Obviously, it's resource based in an ecosystem. With human beings, it's imaginary. It's ones and zeros in a computer. Nonetheless, that is the nature of what digital is. It's it's inauthentic. It's of the mind. Anyway, I won't get into that right now. So, human beings, if they refuse to take responsibility, if they refuse to claim their authority, then not only is the rest of the system incapable of recognizing that authority, and therefore incapable of utilizing it to meet an unmet need of some other component within the system, it's draining that system, and it cannot generate wealth if there's something else within the system that is incapable of wielding power and contributing to that system. So how is that linked to limbo? So some of you will have heard the concept of a shadow government before, or to make it more universal, let's say shadow power, shadow forms of power. What does that mean? Well, there's only one government, and so when we talk about a shadow government, it's an unseen power. It's a power that lurks in the dark, that is unseen, that is manipulating the environment in order to have its own needs met. Now, the shadow government doesn't have any authority, doesn't have any authority at all. And so it needs the authorities, being the real government, the people who actually have the power to make decisions. The shadow government needs them to make the decisions that they want to make. And so limbo is actually a tool that is utilized by people who are seeking to gain shadow power. And so an example may be, I'll give you a really, a not nice example, being there could be someone that has, in a typical government, you've got bills are being surrendered and hopefully passed in Parliament if they get enough votes. If it's a split decision, then the votes of one person could swing an entire act going into Parliament, and an entire law being changed, and changing the complete landscape of the legal system and the subsequent behaviours that change because of it. Now, in that scenario, someone that doesn't have the power to make that decision, they could do a multitude of different things. They could threaten someone's well-being. They can threaten the well-being of someone else's family. They can bribe people using money. There's a multitude of different ways that they can put that person in a state of limbo, where even without speaking, they can influence the environment around that person so much that it makes them so desperate that it seems like they have no other choice but to make a specific decision, going against their own nature of what they actually want to do because of a perceived threat. And it's always fear that leads to this kind of decision being made. Now, for a human being that refuses to wield power, or just for whatever reason has no power, this is the go-to. And most people who are in this scenario don't realize they're doing it, and they're not, it doesn't make them bad people. But it's either that or be powerless. And if your fear of taking responsibility is too great, then you're going to be so resistant to claiming your own authority and to claiming responsibility for anything that you really have no choice. Because you're in a state of limbo. And this is the point that I really want to get to. If you are someone who really struggles to claim your authority, if you're someone who really struggles to take responsibility, then you are a person that is going to be perpetually forced, inadvertently, I'll say, I don't want to shame you or anything, but you're perpetually forcing yourself to scapegoat other people. And because you have no choice other than to then utilize fear to get people to make decisions that go against their nature. Because if people are not in a state of fear, then they will always follow their nature. And if you want someone to make a decision that you want them to make, and it's not a decision they want to make, then fear is the tool that you use. And a state of limbo is the environment that you'll inadvertently, but probably advertently as well, be trying to create in order to get your way. Because you have no power. And this is the essential thing to understand about, when we're designing new systems and frameworks for society, for human beings to utilize, to build a wealth economy, to build wealth generating organizations and create appreciating intangible assets. And once we bring our focus onto growing an economy based on the appreciation of assets, this mechanism of claiming our authority and our power is imbued into the system. Because in order to create an asset, that asset needs a custodian. And so if you're creating an intangible asset, and that asset is simply an entitlement to utilize your skills as a photographer, it's still an asset, but it exists as latent potential. But unless you claim your authority as a photographer, the asset cannot exist. You see? So in the system I've developed, this is called a principal asset, or a principal digital asset. And that exists as dormant potential to be appreciated. And so let's say you're a photographer, you create an intangible asset, and the Constitution initiates it. Constitution meaning when you constitute something, you're congealing things together in order to produce something. So a constitution simply means that this is the DNA blueprint for this asset. This is the Constitution. This is what it is. This is what it means. These are the entitlements for the one who is in possession of the asset to appreciate the asset. You can appreciate this asset to get some photos taken of your children. You can appreciate this asset to get photos taken of your workmates or your work colleagues for your website, whatever it may be. That until it's utilized, until there is a custodian of that asset, it exists as dormant potential to become something that can be appreciated, that has utility. And so how do we turn a dormant asset that's really in a state of limbo, and I'll get to this in a second, a dormant asset in a state of limbo, how do we turn it into an appreciating asset? Well, in order for that asset to be appreciating, it is becoming part of a greater system. And that system is meeting the unmet needs of some other form of life. And so it's appreciating. And if something is appreciating, it's growing, it's becoming more than what it could have become if it remained in limbo. And if something remains in limbo, then it exists purely in a state of latent potential to become something. And so in quantum physics, we call this the field of potentiality. Everything pre-manifested reality exists in a state of latent, dormant, untapped potential to become something else. And when it does become something else, let's say, I'll give you another example. So let's say if it was some kind of molecule, then the dormant potential is, the asset is a hydrogen atom. And then there are 2 oxygen atoms. Individually, they exist as dormant potential. They're just a building block. They're just a brick. And if you look at a building block or a brick, it's pretty dull. It's just a brick. It's just a square piece of concrete. But if you look at all the buildings around you made of bricks, look at what they're capable of becoming. They can become a house, a garage, a church, a museum, a stadium. So together, the hydrogen building block and the 2 oxygen building blocks, they can, as assets, they can form bonds with each other in order to become water. Now, hydrogen building block cannot become water on its own. It has to collaborate. An oxygen atom cannot become water on its own. It has to collaborate with another oxygen atom and with a hydrogen atom. And when they do collaborate, they establish bonds and connections that are harmonious and stable. And when they reach a stable state, they become something entirely new. Something entirely new. But here's the thing. If you look at a house that's been built out of bricks, that if you look at the wall and you look at an individual brick, the brick's still there. The brick hasn't become a house. The brick hasn't become a garage, sorry. And the brick next to it, they're all still bricks. They're all still identical to what they were when they were individuated. When it was just a big pile of bricks, you go and pick up a single brick. It's just a brick. And that brick is identical to how it is in the wall of the garage that it's built. And this is the nature of reality, of the reality we live in, is that it is immutable and mutable. The immutability, meaning the unchangeability of a single brick. The fact that it will always be a brick means that it's capable of creating mutable structures, meaning structures that are different and entirely unique and changeable. I mean, how many different structures could you make out of a pile of bricks? It's infinite potential. And so that's what the building blocks of all of creation are. Immutable building blocks. Hydrogen is a base element. Oxygen, a base element. They're elementary and they're immutable. But together, when they cooperatively collaborate, they can become something much, much greater. They can become a part of something so much bigger than they could possibly ever become on their own. And this is how it is with human beings. If we want to become more and greater than what we are as individuals, collaboration is the mechanism. Not just actual collaboration, cooperative collaboration. We have to be able to cooperate collaboratively. We are simultaneously seeking to receive in order to meet our own needs and to give, to express into that system that we're a part of. so that the other component parts can receive our gifts, can receive our assets, and appreciate our latent or dormant potential of those assets. Cooperation and collaboration enables infinite potentiality to be realized. And until that potential is realized, all of those individual components exist as a dormant asset in limbo. And so you cannot, and one last thing I'll say here, in that scenario, if you're a brick, you can't become a part of the garage unless you're prepared to claim your truth, that I am a red brick. My gift, my uniqueness is my strength. My uniqueness is my versatility. My uniqueness is my color. My uniqueness is the texture. And once you have identified your uniqueness, the meaning can be interpreted. Because I am so strong, it means that I can become the foundation for a pillar. Because I'm so versatile, it means that I can become part of an immense structure. Because I am red, it means that I can become part of a red garage. Because of the texture that I have, it means that I'm not going to get dirty over time, or whatever it may be. Identifying your uniqueness as a human being is essential if you're ever to become fulfilled, let alone become part of a cooperative collaboration that is where the sum of the individual parts is much, much greater and more magnificent than you could have ever become on your own. But understand, you don't own the collaboration. The brick in the wall of the garage doesn't own the garage. It understands its uniqueness and it expresses that to its highest potential. That's what it gives. And it receives everything that the rest of the ecosystem is prepared to give and that it is capable of assimilating or receiving, of appreciating. There is no barrier. It doesn't think, I better not take too much of this because someone else might starve. That brick is not thinking about the other bricks. It's looking after itself, and it's just expressing its unique nature. And everyone around it is receiving because of its individual capacity to thrive. This is what cooperative collaboration means. It means you're not there to help each other. You're there to be who and what you are. Understanding that if you do express your nature and follow your nature, the uniqueness of your nature, to your full capability and capacity, then the organization will just thrive by default. And if through the evolution of that organization there's a limitation, then the barriers to progress are made out of wealth, a surplus. Progress isn't made on faulty foundations of debt. All progress comes from a sustained surplus. And over time, that surplus accumulates, and there's enough of a surplus, in fact 50% of the projected output of that organisation is available for innovative progress, for the spawning of unique and different assets that are capable of meeting an unmet need that is arising, that are capable of dissolving barriers to much, much greater progress. And then that wealth accumulates out of the future surplus from that. and it becomes perpetual. This is the key. But understand everything that you begin to make, that you begin to create, is coming from a surplus of kinetic energy within your body. A thought, an idea, the inspiration to act, creating the kinetic energy to move particles. And that's the birth of all creation right there. Your surplus creative energy is there to ignite completely new forms of life, completely new systems. And if you can build them in a way where they're capable of being perpetual, self-regulating, self-reliant in perpetuity, where the blueprint is immutable, but the form that and the structure that it takes is totally mutable, capable of becoming anything, then really you're enabling thriving to take place on a mass scale. And the price of admission is for you to claim your authority and for you to claim your uniqueness, for you to claim your power so that you can wield that power into the ecosystem around you and others can receive it. There's one thing I can promise you. If you don't figure out how to reconcile your resistance to claiming responsibility, claiming authority, to identifying your own uniqueness, no one will ever be able to appreciate you. Ever. Ever. And you'll be on an endless quest for the rest of your life to trying to figure out why no one appreciates you. No one appreciates what you do. No one's appreciating your presence. No matter what you do, it's like people are always rejecting you. People just don't seem to appreciate you in any way. People don't appreciate your gifts. They don't appreciate your genius. Unless you claim your power and your authority and own your uniqueness and turn it into an asset and make it available for people to be able to utilize to form cooperative collaborations in order to appreciate your assets, you'll never feel appreciated, ever. Because not only were you not able to appreciate your own assets by identifying them, you're not giving anyone else the opportunity to appreciate them in ways that you will never be able to see. So, are you someone that's trying to put people in a state of fear and limbo in order to get your way? Are you someone who's inadvertently creating pockets of shadow power by using duress to get people to make decisions that you want them to make rather than the decisions that they want to make? And do you feel like no one appreciates you? If so, then it's time to look inward and to identify and reveal your uniqueness. To appreciate your own assets. What are they? Write them down. Start to think about how that could be, how those assets could be appreciated by some form of organization or project. Ideally, a cooperative collaboration that can actually appreciate those assets, meaning where they'll have utility within a system where it forms a component part, where it forms one of the building blocks. And watch your life change. Because the state of limbo that you're trying to put others into so that they make the decisions you don't have the power to make is in truth a mirror of the limbo that you are in right now, because no one has the capability or the capacity to appreciate your assets, your gifts, your uniqueness. So how can we? Okay, I'm going to leave it there. That's it for the state of limbo. Actually, one last thing I will say about limbo is that it's a valid state of transition. Let's say if you've got, if you have identified your assets, they have been utilized in an organization, the environment, an unforeseen circumstance happens, and that organization has to significantly change or alter its course, or what we would call reconstitute itself, which means that the dissolving of an existing bond between assets becomes unstable, and so a new asset needs to be formed, or new bonds need to be formed that render another asset obsolete in the new context. Then it falls into a state of limbo, and that simply means that it's in a state of transition until someone else who does have the capability and the capacity to appreciate it as part of their cooperative collaboration identifies it, comes along and sees it. So limbo is totally valid, but it simply means that it exists in a state of latent, untapped potential. And so you could quite easily, if you're into quantum physics, you could very easily say that the unified field or the field that is a field of pure potentiality, that is limbo. That is the state of limbo. Pre-manifested reality, latent potential, dormant potential. But within that field is the potential to become a garage, a cathedral, a house, a wall, the Great Wall of China. Infinite potential to become. So I appreciate limbo. I appreciate it. And, knowing that there is a field of latent, dormant, pure potential to become anything, means that if we just simply focus on what we do want to appreciate, what we do have the capability and the capacity to appreciate right now, then that's the pathway towards realizing deeper and deeper potential and greater potential of what that field can become. Okay, our friend limbo. Time to appreciate it. Okay, cheers for now.